ET now, a very special guest, the man of the moment in some ways, Adar Poonawalla of Serum Institute of India, one of the largest vaccine makers in the world in terms of doses produced and sold, is joining us on the show. The reason I call him the man of the moment is because ever since Serum Institute of India has announced that it will work towards possibly developing a vaccine towards coronavirus, and could be ready by October, people have seen new hope. Mr. Poonawalla, let me begin by just getting very clearly your take on where we stand in the race to the vaccine.
Thank you. We need to manage people's expectations a little bit, but also give them positive news in these times, because there's so much doom and gloom out there. We don't know how long the lockdowns will continue. We don't know how far and long-term effects, what the long-term effects of being locked down to our livelihoods will be. So naturally, this sort of news and development, I think, has been very positive. But having said that, where we are at the moment is that the Oxford vaccine candidate, which is far ahead of the other partnerships that we've got with other companies, which are going into animal testing for different vaccine candidates, is that here, this is, of course, belonging to Oxford. It's not ours. So I must clarify that. But we are one of their major vaccine manufacturing partners, which means that we will be very soon be able to manufacture volumes at high volumes of this vaccine and get a head start on the manufacturing, so that when and if the trial is successful in October, or September, October, in the UK, we will have millions of doses instead of waiting for another 6 months after that, to produce the vaccine, because it does take a couple of months to produce a vaccine from scratch. So that's what everyone's excited about. This trial, the vaccine's already gone into human beings in the UK in the last couple of days that you may have heard. And we're hoping to also do a study in India very soon to prove the safety and efficacy of this vaccine. So let's see how that pans out.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, you are going to begin to produce the vaccine already, even as the trials go on. Isn't that a risky proposition? We saw what happened with Gilead's trial, one leak, and then a lot of damage control over there. These are times when there are very high expectations, and clinical trials is only the very, very first step, as I understand.
Yes. So, of course, there's risk. And being a privately held company, I could take that decision, not being accountable to investors and other shareholders or banks, where I could make these risky decisions by setting aside other commercially viable vaccine projects and putting this into vaccine production instead of those. And that is a big opportunity loss for us. But we decided to do this, in the national interest and in the general interest of humanity, to take this risk and get a jump start on the production.
Okay, let me just get a sense. I was going through some of your earlier quotes, Mr. Poonawalla, and on around the 17th of this month, you were quoted as saying that a vaccine will be ready by 2021. A little earlier, around the 7th, you were quoted as saying that a vaccine will be ready by the second quarter of 2022. Earlier in March, you said a vaccine may be ready in 2 years. What has led to the speeding up of the process? Today, you and I are speaking, and potentially, if all goes well, fingers crossed, we could see the first doses in October.
Yes. So when I was making those statements, that was pertaining to my partnerships with Themis and Codagenics in the United States, which are co-developing the vaccine candidates. So those, obviously, because they're not even into finishing the animal studies in mice and primates, that is obviously 4 to 5 months behind where we are today with the Oxford product. You see, Oxford started working on this in January or February, and already had a platform which it had used for the Ebola vaccine, so which was time tested and proven. So they already were far ahead. And so we've only partnered as one of the 5 or 6 manufacturers to produce the product, under their license and technology and whatnot. What I was referring to for the 2021 development projects were my own projects with my own partners like Codagenics and another company in Pune that I might tie up with. So these are the 2-3 other projects that may take up to 2 years for a vaccine candidate. This was just a head start because, you've got something going on from Oxford.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll take all the good news we get at this point. There's no doubt about that. But, just to give us some perspective, right now across the world, there are, of course, various companies and governments, race and a high, but many have high hopes from India. Because we have a history and experience of dealing with large-scale diseases as well. Do you think India is better poised at this time to be ahead in developing a vaccine?
Well, not only, as I said, yes, developing and manufacturing, because look, you may have 100 vaccine candidates that you heard about being developed, but maybe only a handful of companies, maybe 2 or 3 abroad and 2, 3 Indian vaccine companies that can, at low cost and high quality, produce these kind of volumes that the world needs. I mean, India itself needs 1 billion doses, if not more. So who's going to produce that? So naturally, they will look at India. And today, India leads the way in vaccine production because 70% of vaccines made in the world are made in India. And this is indeed a proud moment. And naturally, therefore, the world looks at us as a country leading in this area.
What is the safety of vaccines being developed at such a sped up rate? Vaccines take years to develop generally. Here, everyone is in fast forward motion, and understandably so, because the sooner you have a vaccine, the sooner we have a way of, thinking of a world post-COVID-19. But what about side effects? What about the efficacy of these vaccines? Will they be perfectly safe?
You're one of the few people who've asked me this question, and this is a very good question because some development projects across the globe may fast-track things, overlooking safety and efficacy, and we don't want to do that. So we trust the Oxford protocols, we trust the Oxford scientists and the credibility that brings to the table. We're not partnering with, just some fly-by-night operator who may claim they have a vaccine candidate, because naturally that will have safety concerns. And I'd be the last person to advocate to my countrymen to take a product which could have safety issues. So we are going to take safety very seriously. In fact, based on that, we have decided, even though we didn't need to, do an additional safety trial in India on Indians first, in a small number of Indians, maybe a few hundred, and then maybe go into thousands later on. Before we give the vaccine to Indians. And that's very important because, as you rightly said, this normally takes years. And when you're putting it all together, you don't want to miss something, and then have some other bad news. But of course, don't forget, it also takes years because of the regulatory approvals. It's not just the development and time testing of a vaccine that takes time. So today, what we're seeing in India is unprecedented. We have got the ICMR, DBT, Health Ministry, the Drug Controller's Office, all of us are coordinating and working very closely together. And in a matter of days, something that would have taken months or maybe even a year to get approved because of the backlog, because of this way the system is designed, which Modi ji has tried a lot to reduce and improve. And I hope that happens for the general and becomes the new norm. The single window clearances that we've been talking about as an industry, I hope that what we've done for COVID also continues for the general vaccine developments, because then you'll really see India's vaccine development leading the world. Instead of coming out with one vaccine every 2 or 3 years, we'll come out with 3 vaccines every year. So I think the regulatory process also is something that we must acknowledge. Takes a lot of time. And the way in which the special experts now have been given the power and time to prioritize and review the data that we will produce in our clinical studies and preclinical studies will definitely save about 2 years out of the 3 years that would have taken, to develop the vaccine.
Wow. And when do clinical trials in India begin?
Well, subject to the Oxford University chaps giving us a go-ahead and we have a proper agreement in place, we hope that we can start the trial. People over here have, the regulators have said that, just let's design the protocols and go from there. So I think by the end of May, to be very safe, in my statement, we should be able to start some kind of COVID trials in humans in India as well.
Okay, just a couple of questions more, Mr. Poonawalla. One is, there is a lot of talk about how BCG vaccines that, a whole host of Indians have got, have perhaps given us a leg up. There are some talks about oral polio drops being, another sort of panacea. Are you looking at any of this? Is there any information on these alternates that you can share?
Well, polio, I don't think that makes any sense at all. But the BCG subject is a very interesting one, because the health experts and the health community at large, when they realized and saw this data, which I'm sure you're referring to also, where all the countries that have BCG vaccine in their program have seen 6 to 7 times less fatalities and severity of the COVID disease, because BCG is known to build the innate immunity and make you stronger toward all kinds of virus and bacteria. Of course, in no ways is it a replacement to getting a COVID vaccine, but for something that's made for 20, 30 rupees a dose, it's a fairly inexpensive thing to take to give you a general immunity boost. Now, I'm not propagating this. This is what the experts were saying. So we all got together and said, let's do some clinical trials in high-risk individuals, immunocompromised people, to really test out this theory, that is it true or not? And that's what's happening in the US, Australia, and in India. Within 2 weeks also, we'll be starting a trial just to prove this point. And then we can say that, look, BCG, can help you with this. What I don't want to make is any statements that this may help or that may help till trials are over, because what happened with hydrochloroquine, with that Gilead drug, and so many other things. We must wait for clinical trials to get over, and then we can make statements to recommend things. You can make a hypothesis, but you can't make a recommendation.
Absolutely. Just one last question, Mr. Poonawalla. When the vaccine comes out, and I won't say if, when it does come out, what do you think it would be priced at? Because in a country like India, we need to ensure access to everyone.
Well, I was asked this question before, and of course, it's too early to say, because we don't know the costing and the opportunity cost and what is going on right now and how we can price it. But as you know, our philosophy has always been to give everything as affordable and accessible to African countries, Indian countries, all these countries which just don't have access to low-cost vaccines. And today a test in India costs about 4,000 rupees. So we could have technically priced a cure or a vaccine that protects you for a few years or even for life at maybe 10 or 15,000 rupees. But we've decided internally to price it at 1,000 rupees, which is, 1/3 the price of even a test, which you may have to get done multiple times. And we thought that would be a very safe and affordable price that everyone would be able to afford. And look, right now, I don't even think the pricing would be an issue, because everything that we make, we propose that the government takes it and then allocates it on priority to the different states, healthcare professionals, and areas where people need it the most. So it'll mainly be given, I think, to the government, and then they will have to responsibly decide the distribution. I don't want to do that, because it's too much of a responsibility for me to decide that. I think it's better that the government decides that accordingly, and because they are more informed and well informed about what.
But how much is it going to cost you to make it?
As I said, it's still too early to say, but a price close to cost for this, because of the new manufacturing site and everything, or supplement another vaccine, it'll probably be around 1,000 rupees itself. So we're proposing to give it around at that price. But again, it's too early. Don't hold me to that. And we can maybe give you a more accurate figure, probably in the month of August, when we're closer to, understanding the costing of the vaccine.
All right, looking forward to speaking to you again and getting an update from you in the month of August. But till then, the very best of luck, Mr. Poonawalla. We're all hoping for great success here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.